Happy election night, people. You have chose the best. Sports Reports is ordered, and these are the sounds. With me, I have the one and only. Born in Texas, raised in VA, representing New Jerusalem, led everybody to the polls and led Kamala to a win in New Jersey. And you got me, as you see on the screen. All I want is for FSU to win. And maybe Mike Tyson knock out Jake Paul. Maybe. But I'm 2-5. Like, review, subscribe, share. Do all the free things. Do all the good things. And here we go. We're going to start things off with Get It Off My Chest. And Mr. Logical, you're up the bat.
Here we go. So shout out to Rach once again for the merch. Yeah, I mean, Mr. Logical 2-5. Don't bring feelings so fact fight.
Yes, sir.
Black review, share, subscribe.
Yeah,
unorthodox
statistician.
So yeah, you know, it's a wonderful thing to have fans that care about the show. So once again, thank you, Rach, for the apparel. And once again, this part right here means a lot to me. Don't bring feelings to a fact fight. I'm talking to all you dudes that keep posting anytime Kansas City gets a missed call and they have a good play afterwards. Stop posting that shit. Just stop. Unless you're going to post it for all 16 games. Because it happens all the time. The Rams got a bogus holding call in their last drive against Seattle. Luckily, they were able to overcome it in overtime with the beautiful pass from Stafford to Robinson for the one-handed catch for the touchdown. The Houston Texans got a bogus call against the Jets, but they still had him in 3rd and 19, and Garrett Wilson made the great catch in the end zone. Atlanta got a few calls. We talked about the San Francisco-Dallas playoff game where Dak couldn't spike the ball after the quarterback draw because the ref didn't set it. Well, I'm guessing that maybe they had a conversation because the ref ran into the Tampa Bay Atlanta game. He touched the ball. He got it away. They snapped it, spiked it. 1 second game time field goal. They went in overtime. Every team gets perks. Every team gets good calls or bad calls. It's all about, did you execute? We could talk about the overtime play where was it Jawan Taylor. He does that a lot. I'm not going to front like he doesn't do it a lot.
He does.
But with 27 seconds left or 33 seconds left, Todd Bowles called a timeout when he got the ball down to the 1. Don't do that. Run the clock down. You know what your plays are. It's 4 plays you run from the goal line. It's either handoff behind the big uglies, a play action bootleg, you're throwing it to one of the big uglies, or it's a fade to the wide receiver on the other side, and maybe a quarterback sneak. Those are your 4 options in varying degrees, varying angles, but those are your 4 options essentially from there. You call one of those as the clock's running, you get up to the line. Don't burn the timeout because when you scored on the next play, it's only 27 seconds left. Now you're worried about if we go for 2 and we're up 1, they should have gone for 2, went up 1, played defense, because on that drive from Kansas City, Winfield got his hands on 2 bad Mahomes passes. If you're up 1, that ends your game. And even with that, 2 incompletions, they had 12 seconds. They're on like the 38-yard line. They would need one hell of a pass to get it off.
Mm-hmm.
But I get it. Everybody wants to post their feelings on the internet all the time. They want to put the camera up and they want to cry. They want to hold their dead birds and cry, or they want to cry about the relationship that they're not in. They just want to hold the phone up and cry, and they want everybody else to cry for them. I'm sick of the shit. Stop fucking crying all the goddamn time. Root for a team that wins, and when they lose, you deal with it. Don't try to dim somebody else's light so your team can shine. You sound soft. It's obnoxious. Cut it out. The NFL is not rigged. They do not care enough about you to try to trick you. They're literally going to give you these products. You're going to buy the Bud Light. You're gonna go on the vacations. You're gonna buy your tickets from Priceline. You're gonna buy the Hennessy in the commercials that they advertise. You're gonna pay $700 to see the Cowboys win or lose. You're gonna pay $50 for parking. You're gonna do all the things. There's no need from the rig. You're gonna put in your $20 parlay, hope it's for 990,000. Shut up. Cut it out. Stop posting these goddamn videos.
And those aren't even all the free things. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, but like it's crazy, right? Because speaking of which, real quick, James Franklin, for example, you know, Saturday, Ohio State, you haven't beat them since 2016. Got to be on your P's and Q's. Your fans are dependent on you, right? So, second quarter, you know, you're down. Going into halftime, you get the ball near midfield. They ran a play. It got up. They ran a few plays. It got up to 4th and 1. Are you going to go for it or not? They wasted, I counted, they wasted 27 seconds. Then called the timeout. So now you're rushing down the field and end up throwing a pick in the end zone. You know, like you lost the game right there. Like forget the second half. You lost the game right there. You know, you had a 10-0 lead anyway. But anyway, you know, like, these coaches, you know, don't even get me started on Dabo. I'll talk about him later. But get it off my chest. So I just want to let America know there might be times, even if you're not a fighter, you might have to whoop somebody's ass. You know what I'm saying? Like, look, I'm not a fighter. I'm not going to sit up here in front like I be out in these streets or I be putting hands on people. You know what I'm saying? Those days are gone. And I wasn't even out there like that. But the point being is that when you talk behind these microphones, when you write reports, you have to be cognizant of what you say. So, for example, the Running Sports Reports Disordered joke is, you got Julius Randle on your team? But I ain't sitting up here talking about, what kind of son did his mama raise? You know what I'm saying? Or anything like that. We're talking about stuff that's actually happening on the court. You need to pass the ball. You're taking too many threes. If he get mad at that, he just sensitive. You know what I'm saying? But if I say those things like I just said, he got all the reason in the world to want to put hands on me. So when this reporter talks, and I'm not going to say his name because I don't even want to legitimize him, but he comes out here talking about, Joel Embiid's his brother, and his son. First of all, anything familial, keep it out your mouth. You know, because first of all, Joel Embiid is fucking 7'2" or something, and he's like an ogre. He's like a damn Oakwood sycamore tree or something. Yeah. You know, so first of all, watch your mouth, because if he puts hands on you, it's gonna hurt. So you were lucky and fortunate to get away with a shove. Now Joel Embiid has since gotten a 3-game suspension. I don't want to hear nothing about it. I don't want to hear how it was wrong. I don't want to hear how it's okay, how it was right. Joel Embiid did the right thing. When people try you that way and talk about your family, you got to stand up for yourself. Just like a couple of months ago, we talked about Prime and how he called out that reporter. Like, you know, I don't want you here. I ain't answering no questions from you. You don't get to throw rocks and hide your hands. But if you throw rocks, you're going to get these hands. You know what I'm saying? That's it.
That's what it boils down to. You just gotta. I remember a great line from one of my favorite movies, 300. Leonidas would talk to the emissary. He was like, "Listen, every man in Sparta is accountable for his words, even though you're just, emissary. Like, you say it, you might get kicked in the chest down his hole." And he said it anyway, and he got kicked in the chest down the hole. He's like, "Listen, I gave you a warning. I told you, every man in Sparta is accountable for his words." And I think now with this whole this desire to go viral, I think even the reporters kind of get wrapped in that, because that conversation with Trayvon Diggs on the play where, that the interaction he had, the reporter was awfully smug because all the cameras were around and it was a little bit of a barrier. I don't know if you want these NFL hands. And I get it. Everybody can't fight. It's not a skill that everybody has, being able to move, bob, and weave. But these dudes lift weight and tackle 200+ pound people for a living, who also lift weights.
Well, even if he can't fight, he can grab.
He can grab, and he's wearing shoulder pads. He's padded up. So if he gets to you in your blazer, it's a wrap.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody can help you, but most people are like, listen, I'm trying to get this footage. It's not a cameraman in that little circle that was going to put his camera down to get digs off of you. He's going to be like this. Hoping that somebody else helped you. But he's going like, I'm getting this footage for TV7 News in Dallas or whoever the hell he's recording for. So you got to watch your mouth because, listen, people can, you can plead down and charge. Like I used to tell my troops, like, listen, you're more likely to be like you're going to get more trouble not using a TO, a tech that on the flight line on the airplane, than you are getting in a fight at a bar after work. Because a fight at the bar, you're like, listen, I lost my cool. This person said this to me. Like, all right, cool. We'll get you, some time off, counseling, whatever we need to get you. Uh-huh. You don't use tech data while working on an airplane. You can't rationalize it. So, like, you can justify punching somebody in the face. Like, I'm sorry.
You know what? When I first joined, I know we had a club that, people used to go put on gloves. Like on a Thursday night, you just literally go to the club and get your frustrations out. So, I mean, they put a stop to it, because somebody had to give somebody a black eye. But, besides that.
You were stationed somewhere in the middle of nowhere.
I was down in Goldsboro, North Carolina.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's the middle of nowhere, obligation right there.
All right. So taking it over to the Shield, we had some action these last couple of days. For example, New Orleans fired their coach.
Throwing in the towel.
We knew it was going to happen. He should have been fired after last season. Eberflus should have been right along with him.
Absolutely. Eberflus, I agree with. Dennis Allen, because you were bringing the same gang back, it made more sense to just keep the same coach, in my opinion.
Well, right now
in a division that wasn't that tough.
So remember, at the start of the season, you was talking all this shit to me because I said
you said New Orleans was going to be the worst team in the division. I was like, how?
I said in the league, and then they went out here and lost to Carolina the other day. They got the same record as Carolina. I'm not saying at this point that they're going to finish worse than Carolina, but I'm just saying it's on the table. So I ain't that crazy. Granted, Derek Carr missed a few games, but Carolina switched out quarterbacks too. But anyway, when I look at the Saints, I don't know what the problem is because, you talked about it in the offseason because I was down on their defense and you talked about how they had young talent. They're a better defense than I was giving them credit for. Yeah. That's his specialty is defense. Alvin Kamara on offense, of course, is a weapon. But then you got your number one receiver who I am going to step back because I was talking a whole lot of stuff about Tua and how I thought he needed to retire. Chris Olave, the one that needed to retire.
I did not. I saw like the videos that's probably posted now. I didn't realize how many games he has been taken off the field due to concussion.
Yeah, he's got like 5 of them or so. I think he's got 5.
Saw the one I saw. So he had he had a hit against Detroit. He got hit by Tampa Bay. He had a game against Atlanta. He had a game against Seattle. He had this recent game against Carolina.
Uh-huh. And he's only been in the league 3 years. This is his 3rd season.
So the video that I saw, I believe it was 6 to 7 different video clips of him leaving the game after hitting his head. So that's not even counting the ones where he just made it to the sideline, he got back in the game or practice. But that was like 6 or 7 that I saw where he was out. He looks slight.
He is.
Like he looks like small, like he's. I don't know if he's quite Devontae Smith small. No, but I don't see Devontae taking those kind of hits, and maybe just the routes that they run. But he took a lot, like I said. Yeah.
So now I think it's time. It was time for regime change because Derek Carr ain't the answer. He's not going to be there beyond this season. So you might as well bring in my opinion, you might as well bring in an offensive-minded coach, pair him up with a quarterback from the draft, unless you believe Spencer Rattler can take over as the starting quarterback. And I got a few names for you, Mr. Logical.
Here we go.
I got a few names for you. So, of course, I'm being half serious with this first one. Mike McCarthy. You know, he's...
Oh, you got coach names. I thought you could go QB names.
Okay. Oh, no. Mike McCarthy, you know, because right now he's trolling Dallas with his play calling. You know, those fake punts, Dak out here tanking. You know, like Dallas is a mess. They're falling apart. It's the end of his contract anyway. So that could be a smooth transition.
The very end of his contract. He literally doesn't even have to. He doesn't have to stay in Dallas if he don't want to.
Right. Here's my name that's going to piss everybody off. And I don't even want him to become a head coach, but I'm just saying this because he's liked in these circles. Kellen Moore. He's been liked in all these circles. We've been told for years he's going to be a head coach. I think Ben Johnson is going to take a better job. Like, he's going to take a job that's already established because he's out here already commanding $15, $20 million. So he's not going to settle for New Orleans. That's why I didn't throw his name out there. You know, but my last name...
That's the Lions OC,
yes,
correct?
Yes. And the last name, the one that I actually am serious about, Todd Monken. Offensive coordinator for the Ravens. You know, offensive coordinator during a national title run for Georgia a couple of years ago with Stetson Bennett. You know, like you see, like what I don't want to say he's turning Lamar Jackson into something, but he simplified that offense and has them humming and efficient.
But is he a byproduct of it? I'm going to say anybody can coach. I'm going to say any intelligent, above average football mind at a coaching position with exceptional athleticism and talent can look like a great coach. Are we in a situation where like the Philly defensive and offensive coordinators, Gannon and Steichen, they look like geniuses with the Philadelphia staff and the Philadelphia players. They look average.
Hey,
now they look good, but it's
Gannon's in first place right now, and Steichen had the Colts one play away from making the playoffs with Gardner Minshew last year.
True, and you know it was very pedestrian-like. It didn't look like it looked in Philly. It didn't look like a Super Bowl.
No, you don't got AJ Brown either.
When you don't have these players, look at Mike McCarthy. Mike McCarthy, 3 years in a row, 36 total wins. A couple of dudes twist ankles. Now everything looks like it's falling apart. So sometimes you kind of got to be wary of, did this guy groom the talent? Did this guy make the offense what it is? Or did he inherit an all-world greatest running quarterback ever?
Well, to some degree, you could say that about Mike McDonald. You know, when he came to Baltimore, you know, from Michigan, you could say the same type of thing. You know, like he went to a team with Roquan Smith, and their secondary was a lot better last year than it is this year. You know, so like I don't know, like you know, I guess that's where the interviews come in. You have people like Eric Bieniemy who get the interviews but can't get the job.
If I'm New Orleans, I'm making one phone call to Mike Vrabel. Come down here, bring structure, bring toughness. I think his presence, not only as a football coach, but just as a big physical presence, I think he's going to be like how Dan Campbell came in. We all kind of laughed at Detroit, but having like that big physical presence. Look at Mike McDaniel down in Miami. They're already ready to run him off. It's like, let's get the ball boy out of here. He just doesn't command the room. Sometimes you need, like Bill Belichick had a 6-foot demeanor. He's probably only about 5'8", but he had like a big demeanor. Like he dominated the room with his like his personality. I think Vrabel in New Orleans, I think that would work because I know for a fact he would hire a good offensive coordinator. He's not gonna have his fingerprints on that at all. Very similar to how Robert Saleh in the Jets, he took offensive coordinator that the quarterback wanted, and now he gets run out of town. I think Vrabel will be the guy that will come in and bring like real stability to, an organization that Sean Payton, Drew Brees kind of built back up.
So let me ask you this, and I'm not, I like Mike Vrabel, but I'm just asking.
I wanted Atlanta to get him. I like what Raheem Morris is doing, but like my thing was like that was a no-brainer because I didn't know Raheem Morris was like a candidate. But when Vrabel got fired, I was like, that's a no-brainer. Bringing this guy with some toughness, because I didn't like Arthur Smith. I thought he was too soft. I thought the team was soft.
But the question I was going to ask, though, is do you want Mike Vrabel on a team that has to start over at quarterback?
I don't think the quarterback selection wasn't him.
No, I know.
I think he was told to draft these guys because he had Tannehill looking like a Pro Bowler with Derrick Henry in the offensive line, because that's the toughness piece. I need a game manager at quarterback, because you got to keep in mind his first few years with Tom Brady. Tom Brady wasn't out there slinging it. Tom Brady was above average intelligence-wise, but he wasn't out there with Peyton Manning level stats. He was out there, tough defensive line, big linebackers, nothing cute, nothing fancy. Oh, we got a 6'4", 220-pound, 230-pound running back available in the draft. Yeah, we're going to take him, and we're going to give him the ball 299 times, and we'll just see what happens. Oh, yeah, he ran for 2,000 yards. I think that's what Vrabel will do, because if you gave Bryce Young a good running game, if you gave, like, you can see what Jaden Daniels doing. Jaden Daniels only has like 9 passing touchdowns, but their ability to control the line of scrimmage, get on the edge, do the tough things, helps them win.
And speaking of the Saints, speaking of the Commanders, hail to the Redskins! Hail victory! Marshawn Lattimore. Boy, did my dreams come true. Pause.
That was a big trade.
Yeah, because I wanted a corner. I didn't necessarily want him, because at the beginning of the season, I didn't know he was available. But I wanted a corner because, stay with me for a second. I'm not doing the thing, but just stay with me for a second. So Philly is shaky. Nick Sirianni is going to lose Philly games they shouldn't lose. They almost lost that game to Jacksonville the other day, for example. You got Minnesota. We don't trust Sam Darnold.
Correct.
Green Bay, Jordan Love can't stop giving the ball to the other team. He's thrown an interception in every game that he's played this year.
Like goddamn Toys for Tots.
Yeah, Chicago, we're going to throw Chicago to the side.
DJ Moore just ran off the field. He was like, I'm hurt.
Kirk Cousins is playing like an MVP. But from
he is the MVP front
he's not. But from a perception standpoint, people disrespect the NFC South. People they're not on the table. San Francisco's down. The Rams are coming from behind. Seattle sucks. And then you got what? Arizona's in first place right now. But, why can't we make the NFC Championship game against Detroit?
Because your quarterback doesn't throw the ball.
He can throw it.
He doesn't throw it for touchdowns.
And I did want another wide receiver, too. I was hoping we'd get another wide receiver. But it is not all about Washington. Other teams made some trades, too. So, I'm not going to take up all the time to talk about my team. I will talk about Mike Williams going to Pittsburgh. And this is another one of those things that pisses me off, because I have, before the season started, I wasn't big on the Steelers. I said that the Steelers, this was going to be the end of Mike Tomlin's winning season streak. The reason that I said that is because Pittsburgh always gives Mike Tomlin spit, bubble gum, and a paper clip. And they say, go make the playoffs. And he does it. So you know what they do? They go get trash because they know he can coach them up. So they went out and got a wide receiver who gets hurt all the time, who has missed seasons. Now that Keenan Allen's in the NFC with the Bears, he's the AFC Keenan Allen. He just came from the Jets, where he wasn't doing anything in their offense. And you can blame that on Aaron Rodgers. Maybe Aaron Rodgers wasn't including him or whatever. But Mike Williams has this.
Trying to include him.
He has a desirable size. Pause. You know what I mean? But he can't stay on the field. So you integrate him in, and you just say Mike Tomlin, make it happen, when they could have got in some of these other receivers' business. If you want, if DeAndre Hopkins was out there, they could have called. I don't know, but I'm just saying you could do better than Mike Williams. Is my point.
My thing is, I think they just need another body across from Pickens that's going to take some attention, because you can't ignore him.
Right.
Like he's too big
if
to
he's there.
ignore. If he's there, if he's available, then you'll be fine. So like that's the only piece. It's like I'll give Pittsburgh credit for making the move. Yeah, they probably could have gotten Mingo from Carolina, but you got to figure, okay, who's desperate, who's going to give up a player that could fit in our system with us only giving up very little for him. I think it was like a 7th round pick or something.
Something like that. Yeah. So then also, and the move that everybody seemed to know was going to happen, Zadarius Smith traded from the Cleveland Browns to the Detroit Lions. So no Aiden Hutchinson, no problem.
So you didn't want to go with the Mike Tannenbaum train where they give up Jahmyr Gibbs 3 first-round picks for Myles Garrett? I think Bart, like we sent me that clip of Mike Tannenbaum. I think he's trolling us at this point because it's like
it's just a thing, right?
I don't think I've ever seen, short of the Ricky Williams trade, where
maybe RG3 or not? Was it RG3? No, it might have been Carson Wentz.
Yeah, we've seen like these pre-draft trades where you trying to get from 17 to 1, and I think Trey Lance, the San Francisco deal was like that. But they just gave up picks. They didn't give up a player that's currently helping your offense be dynamic.
Right.
That's not the same. Like they didn't trade, like New England didn't trade Randy Moss and 3 first-round picks for like the best defensive end that was out there mid-season. So when he even proposed it was preposterous. But Bart Scott was like, yo, you can get Zadarius Smith right there on the other side and get you exactly what you think you can get from Myles Garrett. Like, granted, Myles Garrett had 3 sacks in 3 plays last week against the Chargers, and he is like top-notch special. But if you could get another guy that gives you 8 sacks on the year versus 16, you can take the 8. If he can mix in 6 or 7 tackles for loss, that's about the same.
Yeah.
As far as the sack yards and, stopping plays in the backfield. So if you can get that from him for $400,000, because Cleveland, the way they write these contracts is basically a bunch of uploaded, front-loaded money. And then throughout the season, you're getting paid like $80,000 a week because they give you $12 million, they get $13 million, and you get signing bonus to keep their salary cap. So when they trade him, I think Detroit's paying them $480,000 for the rest of the season.
Yeah, and I think
Cleveland paid him $13 million already.
And this is where because power ranking style, right? I don't care. I'm saying Detroit better than Kansas City. So what? Sue me. But they solidified. We're trying to go to the Super Bowl. We're here. This is our year. And I think it might be. So, we'll later to be determined. But then keeping it going, you brought up Jonathan Mingo. He is a Cowboy now.
Doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make any sense. But
they should be selling. They should be selling like Dan Aykroyd and Eddie Murphy and trading places.
That'll be after the season. I mean, they put Dak on IR, even though we saw the game, he was looking at his hand. They said it was a hamstring, but then I went back and I saw where the injury happened or where it might have happened.
Yeah, so, that ball came like he tweaked something when he threw.
He tried to pull that pass back. You know what I'm saying? Like he was throwing the pass to the tight end and tried to pull it back. And I think he just kind of, caught himself, if you will. But you look at it, this guy is in his 3rd year in the league. He's a 2nd-round draft pick out of Ole Miss. I don't think of him as a game changer. I don't think he's going to go to Dallas, even if Dak is there, and make them back to what people thought they were going to be. Or what they
when you're playing with the backup quarterback. Like, why are you trading for a wide receiver that you need him to prove something to you in order for you to keep him, but you provide him with the backup quarterback in a very limited playbook?
Yeah,
even if you go Trey Lance isn't throwing more than 22 to 24 passes a game and 7 or 8 design runs, and he's probably going to go 13 for 24 in his 24 passes and 140 yards.
And I don't know how people feel about 4th-round draft picks, but they gave up a 4th-round draft pick for a dude, to Mike's point, has 500 career catching, 500 career receiving yards. So I don't know what Dallas is doing. Maybe they're trying to load the roster or, have something that to evaluate to go into next season.
The guy wearing two hats, and both of them, when he puts them on, he says, "I'm smarter than everybody else in the room."
Mm-hmm.
They gave up they gave up like a second. No, they got a 5th round pick for Amari Cooper like 3 or 4 years ago, and then Amari went for like a 3rd this year. So
Davante Adams went for a 5th this year.
They probably could have traded Amari Cooper for a 2nd or a 3rd a few years back, but the ego of the owner and the arrogance of the GM being mixed into one person caused them to make these moves. There's no need for them to go get. They could have signed a wide receiver off their practice squad with the same amount of years in the league and save their draft picks and tank. Like, not necessarily tank, but see what you got. You said it's an all-in year, and I think people kind of got that confused because I like to play Texas Hold'em. And when I say all-in, that means I had to push everything I had to the middle of the table. Jerry pushed everything he had. He gave Dak the money. He has no contracts he has to worry about. Like, we're all in. And if it doesn't work, I'm getting up from the table. I'm going home. Like, or if it wins, you get it back. But I don't think it's like I'm going all in. I'm going to do everything. I'm going to go ahead and gamble this year and see, can I have a lame duck defensive coordinator, a lame duck offensive coach as far as their contract, a quarterback that literally didn't give me any kind of a hometown discount because for the last 6 years, dealing with him in contracts, I've been jerking him around. A wide receiver that they could have signed in March, whatever the new league year opened, before Amon-Ra St. Brown got his deal, CD could have had that deal.
Right.
And he didn't do it, and it ended up costing him more money. So now you're paying $90 million to 2 guys. CeeDee Lamb looked like he hurt himself on one of the plays. And I don't know how long it'll keep him out.
He's getting an MRI.
They'll play through anything if you allow them to.
Well, that's the thing. They're 3-5.
That's not being used.
They're 3-5. They got Philly this week. I don't want to say the season's over because we've seen Cooper Rush. We've seen Cooper Rush come in and win some games in the league. So it's not like they're starting Skylar Thompson or somebody like that.
I mean, Cooper Rush coming in, that works if you're trying to win a game 17-14, but you need a defense that keeps the other team to 14 points. Philly, you're not beating Philly. It's no way how you beat Philly.
Determining when, depending on when Sirianni decides to go for 2.
Sirianni can say, "Yo, for the whole first quarter, we just gonna punt every time we get the ball. We're not even gonna possess the ball, and they will still beat because you have there's no pass rush, there's no pass protection. Atlanta was last in the league in sacks. They had like 6 sacks going.
Yeah, speaking of which, why'd Atlanta let Kansas City get Josh Uche? Why'd Atlanta let Preston Smith go to Pittsburgh?
What you gonna do with that?
Y'all need something.
Listen, we got the safeties on the back end.
What up, Coach?
I appreciate the opinion, but he's not. The only reason he was a solid backup is because the defense kept them in games. They could run the ball. They had Tony Pollard running the ball. They had a stable of wide receivers. They had assets for a backup quarterback to work with. The team that they have now requires a force multiplier at QB to mask it. We'll talk about we'll think about this, like Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray is a force multiplier because they don't have that much on the outside. They have Connor. They got the backup running back. Marvin Harrison Jr. is a threat. The tight ends are coming along, but he is the offense. As he goes, the offense goes. Look at a team like the Raiders. As soon as without Davante Adams, their quarterback play that's why they keep yanking guys in and out of lineup because you're expecting a quarterback. Every team expects their quarterback to be the force multiplier because we have this guy. He's gonna mask these mistakes. Dallas has too much going on as far as injuries, which you can't avoid. You can't avoid the fact that your starting defensive linemen aren't there and the backups aren't as good. It's a reason that one group of guys are starters and the other guys are backups. Cooper Rush is a backup, but he's also going into the game full of backups. It's a high likelihood that CeeDee Lamb doesn't play this week. Even if the guy you draft from Carolina, how much does he know about the offense between today being Tuesday
with the backup quarterback?
With the backup quarterback, how expanded is this playbook going to be? It just seemed. And then okay, cool. Let's keep the calm. They don't run the ball well, so that's the thing. Like all the things that you need Dallas to do, or any good team to do, to stay above water when you have a backup quarterback. Dallas hasn't shown that they can do that this year.
And Mike McCarthy hasn't shown that he can call the right plays. That game against Atlanta was just awful. That was probably the worst coaching game of his career.
Honestly, like I said, if you're going to the game plan, they don't run the ball well, and they still have some good plays. They don't run it consistently, so they rely a lot on Dak. Dak was running around a lot more. He hadn't had. The team hadn't had a 15-yard rush all year.
Right.
I'm not saying Dallas is bad. I'm just saying the available players aren't as good as the guys that are injured. So, not having your top players on a team like that when you're putting in a backup quarterback, that's the problem.
If Dallas beats Philly this weekend, they're going to tie Sirianni up to some of those greased poles. That's what's going to happen.
But that's the thing. Where do you get, if you're Dallas right now with the team that potentially could go out there? Where do you get 14 points? Where do you get 2 scoring drives from?
Jalen Hurts interception. I mean, Saquon fumbled and nobody touched him.
Yeah, this offensively in
special teams.
But that's what happens in the league. We talked about New Orleans. You missed Derek Carr
you remember back in Denver. You remember back in Denver, Kyle Orton was out there every week putting up 24 to 31 points. They weren't winning. Tim Tebow came in. They were winning games 7-3. Maybe the defense will step up. I doubt it, but I'm just saying it could happen. Angels in the outfield. But so I was saying Preston Smith went to Pittsburgh, the Packers' 6th all-time sack leader. So Pittsburgh's just solidifying their defense, I guess. Baltimore went out and got a corner today, which is what they needed. So, I think some of these teams that have made trades besides Washington, they show why they are the teams that they are and why they're successful. They went and got Trey White from the Rams. So, he's coming off an injury. Obviously it wasn't going so well. He's been in and out the lineup, not really playing a lot the last few weeks. But maybe going to a team like Baltimore, who's situated, might turn him around. We'll see.
And like I said, if you're a corner and you're going to Baltimore, you're going to get opportunities to make plays in the run game and plays on the ball. You're not going to just be out there in the island doing some vanilla stuff. You're going to be in the box. You're going to be able to move around a lot like how Marcus Peters was moving around in that.
Yeah, that's what I was just about to say. People thought he was lost.
You're going to get an opportunity to show, this is why I'm out here. I think some teams that probably should have made a couple of moves, maybe Miami. I think Jalen Ramsey might have got a haul from some. I think they might have been able to pluck.
But I don't think Miami thinks their season is over yet. Because they still think about it. They still haven't played the Jets yet. I'm talking about division-wise, obviously. They still haven't played the Jets yet. They're already done with Buffalo. They played them twice already. They don't have to play Buffalo anymore. They still got a game with the Patriots left over. They got the Rams this weekend. You know what I'm saying? That's the or Monday Night Football. That's the ultimate toss-up game. You win that game, and you start building some momentum over the next few weeks. Because we talked about it, right? We picked them to win the division at the start of the season. Both of us did.
Yeah, I did, because I was expecting healthy Tua playing in warm weather for 13 out of 17 games, and I was going to give him a shot. I just don't think this year. I think the concussion. I think the time off, because you got to think about it. A guy misses that much time, He's rusty. So he essentially missed 4.5 games. What are you looking at?
No, I do think the Rams are on the rise, but they ain't gonna win out. You know what I'm saying? So like for example, like let's just stay with me for a second. So Miami, right, over the next few weeks, right? They're at LA for Monday Night Football. They play the Raiders. They play New England. They can't go 3-0 or 2-1 in that stretch. Yeah, I picked the Dolphins. What's up? What you got? Who you got? I said before the season. But anyway,
as the facts change, so does my opinion.
Yeah, but anyway,
the Rams are 4-4, and they have an adult at quarterback, and they got an adult at head coach. They have playmakers on the outside. They have a quarterback that can get them the ball. They have a division that seems to be who wants to be in first place this week, who wants to be in first place this week, and it seems like, hey, like Seattle had that game won. For instance, the overtime 4th and 1 call. I'll argue this to them blue in the face. I know you only need 1 yard, but you can spread it out. We all know you only need 1 yard. So spread it out. Use the field as your defense. Create gaps. You know you want to run it with Kenneth Walker. He can get a yard from shotgun. Or you spread it out and you get Geno on the center.
These coaches outsmart themselves. Dallas did that against y'all. They ran the reversal or the end around on 4th and 1. Yeah.
For what?
Just 1 yard.
You don't need to trick me. You just need to win. You need to win that rep.
You just need to push me for 1 play.
3 feet.
You hear that, Penn State? 1 play.
Everybody out there is 6 feet tall. You need to do the stand up and push him back on his ass. That's 2 yards right there as soon as he hits the ground. So if you can push one guy backwards and you fall on top of him and your running back runs through that hole, that's the first down on 4th and 1. Like, I don't know why it's that complicated, but don't bring everybody in because now you have 8 dudes in the box. For what? Spread them out, make them move us 2 safeties back, or at least 1, and get your 1 yard. Throw a quick pass in the flat. None of this, all of this motion stuff like Cooper DeJean caught Jamar Chase last week. For what? It is 4th and 1. What are you doing all this? If you did all that, decoy him because
I like how we didn't rehearse this, but you keep on feeding me the segue. So Jamar Chase, Cincinnati Bengals made a trade. They went out and got Khalil Herbert from the Chicago Bears, another injured player, but they needed him because Zach Moss is out for the season. Go Utes. And but Cincinnati's 27th in rushing. So they need help anyway. I mean, Chase Brown's been coming on. I thought he should have been the starter from day one. He is now. But now you just got some depth and another piece that at the very least can catch passes out of the backfield.
I mean, if you look
and they got Baltimore on Thursday, by the way. I'm picking the Ravens. Go ahead.
If you look at your practice squad players, there's probably a handful of guys on these practice squads that could have just come up and you could have saved your draft picks. Well, like, why are you trading for an injured guy and another team's injured problem when I can just bring up a running back from like a couple weeks for the trade deadline? Get a practice squad guys more carries because you're looking like, we're kind of thin here, or T. Higgins hasn't been healthy for weeks. It's like, do things preemptively. And that's why, like, when they see these trades, like the Mike Williams trade you talk about Pittsburgh, it's like, yeah, he's been injured a lot. What do you have in the building? Like, you guys have scouted these guys. They're on your practice squad. You scouted guys that you brought in cut. Keep track of these guys. Tell these guys to stay in shape and bring them in instead of wasting draft picks on guys. And then you create expectations for them because you waste their draft pick on them versus a guy you called up.
Right.
Expectations are leveraged different.
And to your point, Girth, the Bengals, couldn't have kept Andy Dalton.
Well, this off the screen.
they could have kept Andy Dalton, but the point is, if they would have kept Andy Dalton, they would have been paying him too much. That when it came time, they'd be in this position where they got to pay Chase, they got to pay Higgins.
Mike, you're just hoping, man. Like, there's no evidence to support that that's the case. I'm not saying he's not bad. I'm not saying that Dallas is a bad team. I am. We collectively, as fans of the sport and fans of the team, you can't point to any game this year where it looked like they were playing winning football. Because even the Cleveland game where they scored 32 points, Dak was like 17 for 32 for like 170 yards. it wasn't like he was out there really dueling it out.
Yeah, Dak and CD weren't on the same page.
We're on the same page. I don't know how many 100-yard games. You can be better if you have the available players.
And don't forget, Micah Parsons is hurt. Bland's been gone all year.
It's nothing wrong with being like, yo, we don't have like the talent that's on the roster is not all on the field.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like I said, they had a lot of good runs against Atlanta. They had some big runs, but they couldn't put it together. They had 4 drives where they went for it on 4th down and didn't get it.
Yeah,
then you had the fake punt. I mean, it's like
just like to let y'all know, Mike is One Mike podcast. Mike is taking bets. He's taking bets. You know what I'm saying? So if you got the smoke, holla at him. But no, and finally, San Francisco picked up Khalil Davis from Houston. He hasn't played a lot. Defensive tackle, they needed the depth there. AJ Brown is hurt, but the Reaper's there. Saquon's there. Hurts is there. Not that Hurts is like this great quarterback or anything.
Goddard is there.
The defense is there. Nakobe Dean picking off in the end zone to close the game. So we'll see. That's why we play the games, though. Like we can say what we think, but shit happens.
Yeah, I got feeling about double digits.
Speaking of which, we got the first college football rankings of the season. Tonight is the night. Not only do we have an election, but we got the first rankings of the season. And I got beef. But more than I got beef, I got questions. I agree with you, Mike. I agree with you. I think the Ravens are going to the Super Bowl as well. But as we go, as we look at this, I'm looking at these rankings 1 through 25, right? And I know that this stuff is going to play out. So I got to talk about it today. I'm not going to wait until December to talk about it. We're here right now. So let me start off from the top. Mr. Logical.
I'm listening.
Why is Ohio State ahead of Georgia? Even though that was my national title pick, I'm just saying, why are they ahead of Georgia?
Because they only lost by a point to Oregon. They only lost by a point to the number 1 team in the country, and they just came back and beat the number 3 team last week. Your transitive property argument.
Well, so all right, let me ask you this. And I hate doing this, but I got to ask it just because we're here.
Okay.
Do you think Penn State is better than Texas?
Yes.
Okay. I don't. But anyway, point being, the reason that I asked that question is because Georgia went into Austin and smacked Texas around. Ohio State, yeah, they beat Penn State. Okay, I give them credit for that. Before that, they struggled with Nebraska. But I can't even go there because Georgia struggled with Florida. And if Florida's quarterback didn't get hurt the other day, Florida probably wins that game.
Georgia also struggled with Kentucky, and they lost to Alabama.
They did. But the difference is that I think I value wins more than losses, as dumb as that might sound, because these teams seem to get credit for good losses, and your good losses outweigh my good wins.
I was loaded up the cannon to kind of retort that, but it's like, no, that makes a lot of sense. Because I was literally that's my, because I think the wins, because everybody isn't, because everyone doesn't play. It's so many games, there's so many teams, there's so many dynamics. I mean, you got Vanderbilt throwing a monkey wrench into everybody's plans about beating Alabama, and Alabama beating Georgia, and then Texas dominating Michigan because we thought Michigan was going to be better, and then BYU being undefeated. And then you have all these things. People thought Colorado was going to be terrible. They're looking good. Iowa State is looking way better. So there's so much going on with the college football landscape that you kind of have to say, well, Ohio State just beat the number 3 team in the country, and their only loss is to the number 1 team in the country. They're at 2.
Okay. Question number 2. Is there a possibility that SMU and Indiana could get screwed because of their names? So follow me through this. So you remember a couple of years ago, you brought it up earlier in our pre-meeting. Nick Saban, I think it was 3 3 years ago, maybe.
Bryce Young's last.
Yeah, his junior year.
Last year. Yeah,
they lost both games on the last play of the game. To Tennessee and to LSU. They lost both those games at the buzzer, basically. And he was like, yo, why can't we get in? You would favor us over these teams. So when I look at SMU, for example, you know who their only loss to is right now?
Not Florida State.
It's BYU. It's not Florida State. It's BYU. They lost to Brigham Young on basically the last play of the game. Now, if they go to the ACC championship game, because right now there's 3 teams with 1 ACC loss: Clemson, SMU, Pitt. SMU just beat Pitt this past weekend. Oh, I'm sorry, SMU's undefeated. I'm sorry.
SMU's undefeated,
yeah. Clemson and Pitt. SMU's undefeated in conference. So if they go to the ACC championship game
against Miami,
I got to say, you can't get into playoffs because you lost 2 games to teams that I have in the playoffs and 2 teams that might be undefeated. If their name is Bama, we wouldn't be having that conversation.
Yes, we would, because Bama didn't get in.
Bama would be in. But that's what I'm saying.
Did they get in?
They had 2 losses.
That Nick Saban.
If they had 1 loss, they would have been in. If they had 1, they would have been in. Yeah,
we know that. We know that. But with 2
the second loss tanked them.
Of course,
because it was only 4 teams. It was only 4 teams then.
Yeah, but the second loss should tank you, and they didn't. The committee didn't cave to the whims of Nick Saban. Literally on TV, he was at another game. Like I think he was at the SEC championship game doing his commentary, saying, "We basically lost 2 games on last-second field goals. Are you saying we're not one of the top 4 teams in the country?" We can say
you very well might be.
You might, but when I'm a chef and I'm making ingredients and you order filet mignon and lobster, you can't bring me sirloin and shrimp and say, hey, I want filet mignon and lobster cooked. It's like, no, you got to bring me the ingredients. So you can't bring me 2 losses and say you're better than somebody else with 1 or 0. Even though we can look at all the rankings and everything else, and I get it, like as a team, they may be better. But as a voting entity, last year, we'll use a prime example. The ingredients that the committee needed was provided by Florida State's injured quarterback. Florida State not having their number 1 quarterback allowed them to go to the podium and say they're not one of the 4 best teams in America because they're not playing their starting quarterback. They're not a whole team. These other 4 teams that we selected, Michigan, Alabama, Washington, and Texas, these teams are your best 4 teams in the country. With 12 teams, it's gonna span out.
All right.
We said earlier, like I think it's gonna probably be 3 SEC schools if they can get 3. If they can rationalize 3, it'll probably be 3. You're probably gonna get 3 Big Ten schools.
I say 4.
So that gives you 6 between the 2 of them, and then the other 6 spots
I think the Big Ten and the SEC are both. Well, hold on, stay there. So that's where the other team that I told you I was thinking about is Indiana. So when you look at Indiana, 9-0 right now, first time in school history, right? They play Michigan this weekend, get a bye week, go to Columbus, and then they finish with Purdue. Here's the question. If Indiana loses to Ohio State,
and finishes 3rd in the Big Ten, and I'm playing the Big Ten championship, do they get in?
Right. Because I would imagine,
that's probably going to be the best seat in the house for most of these teams.
And especially
if you can have 1 loss and you're 3rd in your conference and you don't have to risk your loss in the conference championship game, that's probably this. Ironically,
but see, but the problem is if they beat Ohio, if they lose to Ohio State, they can't jump Penn State. In these rankings I'm talking about, they can't jump Penn State here. Both would have 1 conference loss, and in that scenario. But let's reverse it a little bit. If Indiana loses to Michigan this weekend and then beats Ohio State, they're back in because you got to let them in. They beat Ohio State. But if they lose to Ohio State, do we do they play the easy schedule, they're not as good, they're not in? because they're
Here
Indiana.
This is how I'll take it.
Pause.
Yeah. If I'll use the people I know personally. Me, my son. We'll go our high school versions of ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
My son is a sophomore, starting on varsity football. 6'2.5", 6'3", handsome, tall, curly hair, personable, class president, super popular kid. Me in the 10th grade, I was a smart guy. I wasn't very big. I didn't stand out. I didn't play sports. So we're looking for homecoming dates. Everybody can buy tickets. Everybody can get their outfit. He looks like the guy you want to take to the high school guy. Like, he fits the whole mold. He has everything. I can have the same level of intelligence. I can be just as smart. You can say we're equally as handsome, but he has all the other accolades that go along with the high school aura.
Mm-hmm.
Certain colleges have that homecoming king look, and we want to take them or go with them to the dance. Ohio State has it. Penn State has it when they're good. Miami's gonna have it because it's Miami. It's the U. It's the whole swagger there. Alabama with the 2 losses, they look like, they might not be able to get in. Georgia with the 1 loss. Certain schools are just gonna get more of a look because they fit the mold that is what they want in the college football playoff. It doesn't diminish your season. It's just like, hey, when it boils down to it, Oregon with the flashy helmets is a better look than Indiana with the dull helmets. Boise State, as your at-large, probably rings more bells than Army. It's just the blue turf versus the Service Academy. Can they really compete? All of these things factor into it. Is it fair? No. Life isn't fair.
Life isn't fair. So, question number 3.
As long as you're not getting cheated out of it, like if they don't get cheated, if they put a ref in there that makes sure that they don't get it, or somehow the playing field where they actually play the games is being levied towards one team versus the other, then that's messed up. But the voting part is, listen, the 6'2.5" handsome football player is probably gonna be homecoming king over the dude that just smart who was in Business Leaders of America.
Well, like so that's where. So that's where, like I said, I'll get back to this point that I'm about to say, but that's when you get into the whole like deserved versus best. But we'll come back to that because, actually, we'll get to it right now because here's the next question, 3rd question. Why, besides name, why are Penn State and Texas ahead of BYU?
You can go strength of schedule. You can go name. I'm not even like. I'm not gonna put you back and say it's the name.
Well, no, because when I look at this, right? Because when I look at this, right?
One of these teams that's not
Texas's
in one of
best
these
win? Maybe Vanderbilt. Because they beat Michigan, but
Michigan's kind of a dud.
They lost to Georgia. Yeah, they lost to Georgia, so it's not like you have a Georgia win in your pocket. They lost to, now. Granted, look,
Texas had the college football world on a string early in the year. They got up to number 1. No one's gonna reverse and be like, "Oh, we had them at number 1, but really."
But no, these are new rankings, though. This is new rankings.
But they got up to that level, so they're not gonna fall that far because the rankings are still based on the actual AP pool. It's not like it's that
right. So what I'm looking at though is I'm looking at
BYU never got up to we played the video games even when the game was out in 2008, 2009. I played with Utah. I would start unranked. I create my player. I get all the way up to 3rd. I simulate the game. I wasn't in the national championship game every year. It's just even on the video game where my guy was the Heisman, the Maxwell, he won every award. When it came down to it, it was simulated, and 2 of your blue blood organizations played for the national championship. And my season got simulated started next year. It's just
so in this top 25,
it's a flawed protocol of college football. Yes,
in this top 25 that I have in my hand, Texas ain't beat nobody on this list. Penn State, I'm going down it. Ain't beat nobody on this list. BYU beat 2 of them.
Who they beat?
SMU and Kansas State.
They should get more respect.
Just saying.
But I think they'll get a coin flip opportunities, and they'll
myself. There you go.
And they'll still be in. But it's because of the name that you have to do a little more when you are somewhat the underdog.
All right.
It's just a byproduct of so many elements. The social ecosystem of our society is like, if you are not the popular, sought after entity, you're gonna have to do more to be impressive, and then someone else is gonna have to bring you along. Like somebody in the committee is gonna have to argue and advocate for BYU. Is it fair? No. But will these Mormon fans fill these stadiums if they have it? They'll get it. If it's about money, the Mormons are the second richest, like Mormonism is the second richest religion in the world. So the money will get there. They'll fill the stadium. It's just for right now, you got to keep your core blue blood organizations from 1 through 8, and then you sprinkle these other guys from 8 through 12.
Well, BYU got to get through the Holy War first. Question number 4.
Isaac Wilson.
Question number 4. Looking at these rankings, if Boise State wins out, nobody's going to jump them.
Yeah, they're going to be at 12.
Now, hold up. Wait, here's the question, though. You know what I mean? So when you look at Boise, good loss, right? They lost to Oregon, by 3 points in a game that went back and forth, kickoff returns. Oregon needed special teams touchdowns to win this game, right? You got number 25 down here, Army. November 23rd, Army goes to South Bend, Indiana. If Army walks out of that stadium with a win and wins out, can they jump Boise? If not, if the answer is no,
it'll be between it'll be a conversation between the committee, and they're gonna say, can the service academy compete with the other 11 teams if we put them in? And I'm not sure that they are going to want TCU getting mollywopped a couple years ago. It kind of ended it for they deserve to be
which
in,
is stupid
even
though. But they won a game in between that.
Dumb. But how many people turn the game off?
I know, but they won a game in between that.
But I also want to sell these Budweiser.
So I can't say that they don't. I can't say they don't. See, this is the thing, right? If they would have played, if the year Cincinnati got in, if TCU
Hawaii got in, remember back.
What else? The BCS, but yeah.
They put Hawaii in.
They got smacked by Georgia.
Yeah,
but
we're never doing this again. Boise State won the game against Oklahoma, which bought them the Hawaii ticket. Hawaii, okay, cool. Boise State beat Oklahoma. We'll try it again. Because Boise State beat Oklahoma, Utah beat Alabama, and it was like, okay, you know what? Let's keep trying this. And then whenever the year was, Hawaii got mollywopped. They're like, all right, cool. Now we proved our point. We're gonna go back to the traditional.
That one year they pissed me off because they put Boise against TCU. They were because TCU wasn't in the Big 12 yet. They were in the Mountain West. Boise was in the WAC at the time. And then it was like, let's make them two play each other and they won't beat none of us. But here we are now. But that's where for me, I look at some of these teams and I'm trying to figure out where is the line. This is question number 5. This is the last question. Looking at this top 25, where is the last line, which is the last number that you look at a team and say they can get in before you go, none of these teams are getting in?
20.
Colorado,
because their next 4 games are winnable. and then they will get into the Big 12 championship. I don't think any of these other teams can leapfrog another team. It's going to be tough.
I do. And it starts this weekend.
Iowa State or Kansas State?
No, it starts this weekend. You got Bama going to Baton Rouge. You got Georgia going to Oxford, Mississippi. For all intents and purposes, those are elimination games. Because for Ole Miss, if they lose, that's their third loss. The loser of LSU and Bama, that's their third loss. Now you got Georgia and Tennessee in a few weeks. That's another that might be another elimination game because Tennessee, they both only have one loss right now. But if you're going to keep Texas there, the winner of Bama and LSU, you might see some friction.
Yeah, but that's what you're gonna need. But as we look at it right now, yeah. So Bama, LSU, one of them's gonna cancel themselves out. They're gonna be either 11, 15, or 25 because whoever loses is dropping.
All right. Well, let's play a quick game then.
All right.
LSU beats Bama this weekend.
Bama drops to about 22 where Louisville is right now.
Okay. I don't think they dropped that far.
They have to. There's no you can't even justify. You can't rationalize it in your
if they lose this game to LSU, I think they fall to 16 or 17.
If they lose this game, they drop to 22. Because how am I gonna put Alabama at 6-3 ahead?
Because they still rank on who's the best. So they're going to say that Alabama is better than Pitt or whatever. You know what I mean? Pitt got Clemson in a couple of weeks at home.
Alabama and Louisville will be side by side, either at 20 or 20.
Okay.
Between 20 and 22. Because they're out. For all intents and purposes, there's no reason to have them at 16 because they can't get back into 12. That's what I'm saying. They're out. If they I'll give you a team like Notre Dame. Notre Dame loses, they'll go to 16 because maybe they can get back in. But Alabama with 3 losses, they're not even going to waste one of these
weekend to Florida State. They better lose. Yeah. They better lose.
They're not going to waste one of these team spots. They're not going to waste 13 and 19 on Alabama because they can't get back in.
All right. So now, Ole Miss beats Georgia this weekend. They're at 16. Where they go?
Ole Miss would be 8-2, 16. They would go.
Do they just take Bama's spot, or what? Or if Bama.
LSU would also be 7-2, and Ole Miss would be 8-2.
And LSU beat Ole Miss.
So I think you probably move them both up to 13 and 14.
Well, I think Ole Miss is going to. I think they would move higher than that just because it's Georgia. I think they would move into 11 if LSU beats Bama or whatever.
It's like I said, it's going to take a lot for a 2-loss team. It's at some point there has to be some level of integrity.
Well, that's why I brought up Indiana.
Just keep moving SEC teams up to 8 because they play each other. We get it. Every year they play each other. That doesn't mean that every single year one team has a fluke victory. They need to move.
And that's why I brought up Indiana because if they win this weekend, Michigan might be their best win of the season because their schedule is so weak. So, you would like to honor the undefeated record. And they're in the Big Ten. So even though they had an easier schedule, it's still a power conference schedule. But when I look at Indiana in that context,
I mean, they're in the top 10.
They're in the sweet spot.
They're in a good spot. If they were on the outside, we look at Pitt just lost. So
A&M.
A&M has 2 losses though. You're out at 2.
Okay. So Iowa State then. Iowa
State at 7-1
because they don't play Colorado. They don't play BYU, but they do the last game of the season play Kansas State.
Yeah. So they'll eliminate themselves, but we all know if the first round they're all home games, they're not stadium games. You got to fill an NFL stadium. I mean, it boils down to we talked about the money, and it's going to be a competitive thing. Like they're not going to ignore a 1-loss BYU and try to put in a 3-loss LSU team. It's just like the integrity of the sport will be called into question if that's the case.
But I do.
Will someone be at 14 that might have 1 loss or a case for? Yes. Will someone go into their championship game undefeated and lose to a 2-loss team and be out on the outside of 12? Yes, it will happen. Will it happen to a team like Oregon? Probably not. Will it happen to a team like BYU? Possibly. So the
SEC bias over here. We're talking about the committee.
Yeah, I'm talking about what the committee's going to do. I don't think the SEC should just be given.
Yeah, because if it were me, Bama would be a lot lower. Like, I mean, they beat Georgia, yes, but they got 2 losses. One of them is to Vanderbilt.
The likelihood that they're going to play an SEC championship is
0. Just about, you know what I mean?
So them at 11 is out of respect for them as a team, but ultimately they're not going to stay at 11.
Potentially the winner of the Texas A&M game at the end of the season. Potentially, the winner of that game is in the SEC title game because they both have easy schedules going the rest of the way. Even though A&M lost to South Carolina this weekend, so you could argue that no game is a sure thing, you know. Right. But as it stands right now, the winner of that game is probably in the SEC championship game. The winner of the Georgia-Tennessee game is probably in the SEC championship game. You know, because Tennessee's already beat Bama.
The SEC is going to have probably 5 teams at the end of the year that you can articulate an argument for them, but they should be. I don't say it should be capped like it should be a rule, but 3, because right now if they had a bunch of undefeated teams, I can give you 3 and a possible.
Well, that's where the Big Ten comes in. That's where the Big Ten comes in because Oregon's undefeated. They're probably going to win out. You know, they got Maryland, Washington, and I believe Wisconsin. They're going to win out. You know what I mean? You got Ohio State. You know, they got Indiana. They got Purdue this weekend, Indiana in 2 weeks. They got Michigan at the end of the season. You know, you got Penn State, you know, who still has Maryland, Washington this weekend.
And you got Miami undefeated at 9.
Miami undefeated.
And it looks like I don't
want to count Miami. I don't want to count Miami yet. I'm just talking about Big Ten right now. Okay. Then you got Indiana, who's undefeated. But and that's the thing. Indiana doesn't play Oregon or Penn State. Penn State doesn't play Oregon or Indiana. You know, Ohio State plays Oregon.
I'm just counting real quick, but I'm listening.
Ohio State plays Oregon, Penn State, and Indiana. So that's where you get into these things, right? So do you get to a point in a playoff situation where you're arguing about teams getting in? Do you go, yeah, but this team had to play this schedule versus like you know what I mean? Like if it's a 1-loss, I don't know, Indiana and a 1-loss Penn State, it kind of washes out. Their schedules are the same, you know, like Penn State has Illinois on their schedule, so that helps them.
And Notre Dame still consider themselves independent, correct?
Correct. And they're riding off of the A&M win. They beat Louisville as well. So Notre Dame has 2 top 25 wins looking at these rankings.
Okay, as of right now, the Big Ten has 4 teams in the top 12.
Yep, the SEC does too.
SEC has 4. ACC has 1.
Big 12 has 1.
Big 12 has 1. Independent. And then you have
the G5.
The G5. What you're going to get is the Big 10, 3 is the max. SEC, I'm going to say 3 is the max. I'm going to go 2 and a possible because I think there's going to be scenarios where the ACC championship game could potentially be Miami, undefeated, 1-loss SMU. 1-loss SMU beats Miami. 1-loss Miami also gets into the 12. So that's going to bump out your SEC school that doesn't play in the championship. So if you have 3 sitting in the top 12, the team that doesn't play in the championship, if we'll say Georgia goes on to win and they end up with the 1-loss Georgia and they're playing Tennessee, then the Tennessee would be the 2-loss. That team will be out, and then you're gonna move in an ACC school. So I think it'll play out right now.
Right.
Right now is just a matter of play the games on your schedule. Don't look at this because the SEC just by proxy, someone's gonna get eliminated in the head-to-head matchups,
right?
And then someone's gonna get eliminated when the championship game comes around. Because you want to be, depends on what conference you're in, you want to be third with the 1 loss, but you don't want to be, like you said, you value the wins. I understand the committee goes with the losses. You don't want to be Indiana with a bad loss to Michigan. Or you could be Indiana third with that Ohio State loss, and Ohio State say they run it and they win it, but if they beat the undefeated Oregon, both of them are getting in, you might not be able to sneak your way in.
Right. And if you're Colorado, you're kind of sitting in the bird's eye seat right now. You're not going to get in as an at-large, obviously, but you got at Texas Tech this weekend. You got Utah, next week at home. You go to Kansas, who wasn't what people expected to be this year, and then you close with Oklahoma State, who basically is, I'd say, they're tanking.
Wrapping up the season, yeah.
Yeah, so like you could possibly go 4-0 in that stretch, and if you do, you're probably in the Big 12 championship game.
You as a not you, the proverbial sense of you, like the teams that want to ensure that they get themselves in the top 12. If you have 2 losses right now, but you can win out and play in your conference championship, you're probably more relaxed than the undefeated teams who have undefeated teams ahead of them. Because if I'm Colorado, I'm like, listen, if I went out, I play in the Big 12 championship. That's it. That's what I know. So every week we got to win. So if you lose, boom, we got 3 losses. We did this to ourselves. If you're BYU or Pitt or Iowa State right now, and you're sitting with the 1 loss and you get another one, it's going to eat at you because you're like, you know what? If we just would have not lost this game, if we would have executed after this timeout, if we didn't give up this big play,
that's where
it's going to crush you to miss it by a game.
And that's where the Big 12 gets interesting. That's where the Big 12 gets interesting because there's a scenario where BYU does lose a game, but they don't play Iowa State or Colorado. Colorado plays neither one. Iowa State plays neither one. So you end up with 3 1-loss in conference, 3 1-loss teams. You got to figure out who makes the Big 12 title game in that scenario.
You got to figure whatever their tiebreakers are.
The losers are out. That's how you
go to overall record, maybe like whatever the parameters of their tiebreakers are.
Well, and that's where you figure out that you in that scenario, if BYU does lose, that's where you only get 1 team in. Because you're going to give that other team
2-loss. Colorado wins the Big 12 championship.
Yeah, so here you go. So
give the other team a second loss, they're gonna drop that team right out.
So it's just like what we talked about with the Big 10. The first step, head to head, nobody plays each other. Is number 2. Win percentage against all common opponents. It would be the same. 3. The tied teams will be compared based on win percentage against the next placed common opponent in the standings. Then you go to, if that doesn't work, you go to combined winning percentage in the conference games of their opponents. So that's where you look at the opponent's conference schedule to see who beat the best teams, I guess, is the translation there. Then if that doesn't work out, they get compared, and I don't even know what this means. They get compared based on a total number of wins in a 12-game season. So I guess whoever has the most wins would win the tiebreaker.
Why is that not the first one?
If you can't get through that.
Hold up. So end of the season, you'll have 11-1 BYU, 11-1 Iowa State, and
then Colorado would be eliminated.
And no, well,
because they would have 10 wins.
But that's what I'm saying. Why isn't that not the first thing?
Well, the second thing, because I guess head-to-head has to be first.
We don't need any of this other stuff.
Well, head-to-head probably has to be first, and then you get that.
It's the overall record.
Hold up, but wait. Let me hold on. Let me read this real quick though. So after that, the representative will be chosen based on the highest ranking by Sports Source Analytics, following the last weekend of the regular season games, and then the last one, coin toss.
Jesus Christ, they're just winging it.
But it's the same across the board. The Big Ten, the ACC, and see in the Big Ten, you get this scenario if if Ohio State beats Indiana, never mind, because they would have beat Penn State too, so they would just go. But so you can't get
in
that
the NFL. There. If the Cowboys finish the season 11-6, and they're 2-4 in the NFC East, and the Eagles finish 10-7, and they're 4-2 in the conference, it doesn't matter because the Cowboys got 11 wins.
Right.
I don't know why that's not the first thing.
Well, because we're talking about conference record here, you know what I mean? So the overall doesn't matter. You could go 6-6 and finish 6-0 in your conference and make the conference title game. You know what I'm saying?
That should never be the case.
I mean, obviously that probably would never happen, but
that's
I'm just saying.
Extreme thing, but I think if we had some staffers here that could dig into it, they could probably find a scenario where a 7-5 team.
Well, I know back in, I don't know what year it was, but it was when the Big East was still a conference. Connecticut, UConn, they won the conference at 8-4, and then they went to the Fiesta Bowl and got blown out by Oklahoma. You know, that was pre-playoff, but you know, Big East had a BCS spot.
I remember when Florida State beat Virginia Tech in the ACC championship when it was Coastal versus Atlantic, but that's the difference. That was,
and they went to the BCS.
They were the best team in their division of the conference,
right?
So that made sense to me. And they played the head-to-head to determine who was going to go to the BCS bowl game.
Right.
And shout out to Q, who's been kind of MIA. He tried to argue that Florida State was better than Virginia Tech. I'm like, that was one game. He's like, nah, they're better. But he's a Colts fan. The same year that the San Diego Chargers beat the 14-0 Colts. I was like, so the 8-5 San Diego Chargers beat the 14-0 Colts.
Yeah.
Who was better? So that means the Chargers are better than the Colts. He paused. He goes, on that day they were. I'm like, get out. I think I kicked him out of the shop. I made him go stand in the hallway. Get out. I'm like, get out.
See, a lot of this will resolve itself because, like I said, SMU already beat Pitt last week. Pitt gets Clemson in, I want to say, 2 weeks. They get Clemson at home. So one of them is going to eliminate the other one if they don't lose before then. You know,
there's going to be two teams on the outside looking in. It's probably going to be one head scratcher and one, we get it.
So last question.
We are used to it as college football fans. We're going to be used to somebody's going to be 13 that should have been 11, and someone's going to be 11 that should have been 14.
Last question. How many 2-loss teams could you see making the playoff? And is that going to be bad
games or 13 games? Like champion, like
either or, you know what I'm saying? Any way you want to cut it, you know. And is there a number that's too bad? Or I'm sorry, is there a number that makes the playoff look bad?
For them.
4 is the number that would make it bad.
4, I think 4 because you would have. Well, maybe it'll make it seem like college football is more competitive because I know, like the NIL deal, they've been kind of trying to shape this argument that it made college football less competitive. But I'm like, the big schools, they were already putting their money out there. They might not be giving it directly to players, but when Oregon can put out 4 or 5 PS5s and 85-inch TVs in the locker room, you get a high school kid in. That's the same as the NIL money. So the money was always going to be favoring the big school.
Damn, Mike, let's have the playoff.
That's 6 to look back. I don't think 6 2-loss teams to get in because I don't think there's a lot of.
Well, Oregon's not going to get 2
Oregon, losses. Ohio State, Georgia, Miami.
Oregon's not going to end up with 2 losses.
I think those 4 will end up with 0 or 1. As they currently stand with their 1 loss or 0 losses.
Miami, though, they're a team to keep an eye on because they keep starting slow. Georgia usually starts slow, but Georgia starts slow and the score is like 6-0, 3-0. Miami starts slow and falls behind 28-17 and stuff like that, like against Duke this weekend. And then they have to turn it on in the second half. Obviously, they can do it, but you play with fire playing like that. So
you get burned.
They become live to get upset. You know what I mean? But so as I look at this.
But they have a Heisman candidate who's very entertaining.
He's getting in.
As
long as they only lose
1 game.
Which ones? So as I look at this, Oregon's going to finish with a maximum of 1 loss. And if they do lose, it'll probably be, Miami and Georgia. It'll be the Big Ten title game if they lose again. Ohio State could lose to Indiana, or they could lose in the Big Ten championship game. Rivalry, could Michigan beat them up some more? Maybe not this year, but
a 2-loss Miami is not getting in because that
I agree.
Losses would occur after. So essentially, they have 4 games left. They have 3 regular season games, and if they win out, which we're expecting, they get the 1. They can't lose 2 of their next 4 games and then compete for the championship. It wouldn't be a good look.
I don't think Miami can take a loss unless it's in the ACC championship game, because when you look at their schedule over the next couple of weeks, they have Georgia Tech this weekend. That's a road game. They have Wake Forest, and they close at Syracuse. So if they lose any of those games, they're in trouble.
Yeah, and they have to dump. They just have to win.
To your point, the only thing they have. To your point, the only thing they would have in that scenario is a Heisman candidate, because when you look at Miami's schedule
and the helmet,
because when you look at Miami's schedule, who is it? They beat Florida, they beat Florida State. They beat USF.
They just look like college football. They look like the show that you want on TV. Every year isn't going to be the same. Georgia was dominant in their run, and still currently, they are just a dominant team. Carson Beck does not look like a superstar.
No, he doesn't look like it.
Georgia just looks like man for man, 83 players on the roster. They can beat you in a football game, a street fight, an MMA match, rock, paper, scissors, whatever you need them to beat you at.
Carson Beck looked like if they had anything on the bench, he would be on the bench.
Ohio State is just popular. They don't look dominant at all recently. They won against Penn State, but they don't look like the way Miami looks in games. They don't look spectacular. They don't have the swagger that Miami brings. Oregon is Oregon. They're always going to look great on TV. They play well. They play fast. Their uniforms are always great. And I know this might not factor in the sports. People are like, oh, this is a sports podcast. Why are you talking about those other things? All of that factors in. To go back to football, the reason that the Dallas Cowboys play in the NFC East and they wear the colors that they wear is because their owner before Jerry Jones did test runs with different color uniforms to see what uniforms popped on TV. And he kept them in the NFC East so they can be popular, so they can be seen a lot. College football does that same thing when they pick these teams for these playoffs. And they pick the matchups that the games that come on at noon. Alabama's big games are at noon because they want people locked into Alabama games. They want people already starting their day off with Alabama versus whatever big game that week. You get the ball rolling for the day. We'll get the 7:30 kickoff for Ohio State versus Indiana, and then we'll throw a Boise State and Colorado State on at 10:30 so you can finish your day out. They set this game up like a showcase. And as long as the teams that do what they're supposed to do, Georgia dominates, Miami looks spectacular, BYU stays sound and stay undefeated, you'll do it. You can't try to do what these other teams are doing. You got to stick to what you do well. And I think what all these teams do well has gotten them to this point. That's it. Alabama had their opportunity, and they didn't stick to what they do well. You're a powerful team up front, both sides of the ball, and at no point this year did you really exploit that capability. and that got them on the outside. So as long as you can stay consistent there, you'll be fine.
But to your point, Mike, they played that game in Eugene. Oregon won by 1 with Ohio State about 10 yards away from field goal range and just ran out of time when their quarterback slid. So
and they did like a little herky jerky rule that got changed.
Yeah.
With the 12 men on the field,
the 12 men on the field. So like I think Ohio State could beat Oregon on a neutral field. I don't think that's out of the realm of
Where's the Big Ten championship game? Is it in
Lucas Oil?
Oh yeah, so it's a dome.
Yeah, you get Ohio State on that. That's going to be a fast game,
and they're only in the games in Indiana.
Yeah,
that's tough. That's
it's going to basically be an Ohio State home game.
I figure you get 60,000 people in Indianapolis, 70,000.
Let's see.
I mean, what's the capacity? Because I know the MetLife Stadium here is an outdoor one. You get about 70,000 there. I imagine.
Lucas Oil Stadium, 63,000.
63,000. So you're probably looking at 37,000 Ohio State fans.
Yeah, and that still might be low.
That might be low because it's one state over.
Yeah, and I don't know how many Oregon fans there are to begin with.
And I don't know what the Indianapolis
the whole state of Oregon can't carry them. You know what I mean?
And I don't know what the infrastructure of the airport in Indianapolis looks like either. So
if you're the Big Ten, though, that's definitely the conference title game you want. You want that Ohio State Oregon rematch.
You want Ohio State to win so you can get Oregon and Ohio State into your college football playoff.
Yeah, if you're the ACC, you want Miami and Clemson. That's what you want if you're the ACC. I don't know if Clemson going to get there, though, because they played 2 good teams this year. They lost. Clemson's only win over a team with a winning record to date is NC State, and that was with NC State's backup quarterback, and y'all tried to tell me that Clemson is a national title contender.
You're really on by Clemson. Like, they're 23, Mike. They're not moving up too far.
But they can, though. Like,
it's not like your Julius Randle take. Yes, Julius Randle is good at basketball, but Clemson is not moving up. You're good. You're good. They're not going to move up.
Julius Randle is better at basketball this season than Clemson is at football this season. But
yeah, with the ACC, I think what you low key might want this. I don't like. So we got to look at the schedule. You might want SMU to beat Miami in the ACC championship game.
Yeah, that's what you want because that scenario gets you 2 teams.
That scenario gets you 2 teams. I think every conference should want 2 teams. If you have an opportunity, you want 2 teams. You don't want the committee to be able to pick because they're going to squeeze in an SEC school if they can. Are they going to squeeze in? Well, this is an odd year where you don't have like your traditional Pac-12 teams that are good, like a USC. Like those
USC beat LSU, by the way.
Like the West Coast teams, you don't have that. So I think it's a battle of how do we get these SEC schools in and the Big Ten. Like I said, ACC, Big 12, what you want. I would love to see Deion in the college football playoff. I think that would be great.
Yeah.
But it just seems like a lot has to go in their favor.
Right.
Besides just winning out and controlling their own destiny.
Yeah. And if you're the Big 12, I guess you want BYU Colorado. You don't want BYU Iowa State. Like
you don't want BYU Iowa State because you want an undefeated BYU and a 1-loss or the 1 conference loss Colorado playing. Colorado beats them, but BYU is 12-1. They'll get him in at 10 or 11.
Yeah. And then I guess if you're the SEC, you don't care. Like
you SEC, you just want to play a game.
Maybe you don't want Ole Miss. Maybe you want Georgia, Texas. Or if you could find a way to get another Bama Georgia rematch, I doubt it's going to happen. You might want that, but I think the SEC wants Georgia and Texas.
In the SEC, it's going to be very similar to last year. With they're gonna have the record and they're gonna have the argument, but what I think it happened before. I'm trying to think it's going to be like this. You know how the NCAA tournament, you have a school like let's see, like Iona. You know, one of these mid-major schools, and they're ranked.
Shout out to New Rochelle.
Like they're ranked like 23 or 24, but they play in their conference tournament and they lose a championship. So Siena, somebody gets in, and now you're Iona. Like, yo, we were ranked all year long. They're like, well, we really want to get this 18 and 14 Texas.
You don't get the Gonzaga package.
Yeah. So then you get this 18 and 14 Texas team in, or you get, you know, when Kentucky had, you know, a couple of down years, this 19 and 13 team in. It's like, oh, their VPI, whatever some acronym they come up with that year, says it's higher than Iona's, even though they'll be ranked all year long. So like that's the kind of thing that happens with these smaller schools, where the large schools don't have that problem. I think we're gonna have something very similar to that this year when you get Colorado beating BYU in the Big 12 championship.
I need chaos. I need Boise to lose another game too. You know, just so I can see what we do about this G5, and so you won't be right.
Oh, so I won't be right? Listen, that'd be the only thing I'd be right about. Everything else I was wrong. I think I threw that paper away. I was so wrong. I was wrong on everything. I think I'm probably wrong on every single one of my predictions. I'm gonna check my FanDuel.
So I got my eyes on Indiana and SMU. You know, November 23rd, if Georgia and Tennessee can stay clean until then, you know, Army at Notre Dame on that same day, and let the good times roll.
Yeah.
Everything else will fall into place. Those are the, you know, because like as you got Ole Miss, you know, like I said, Ole Miss has a chance this weekend. They beat Georgia. They might just knock Georgia out of the playoff race. You know,
the Falcons are pretty solid. I think I still picked them.
Yeah, you picked. No, that's what he's saying. Like, because you said all you had right.
Was,
yeah.
I mean, that was a heart pick.
I know.
That's a heart pick.
But all right, y'all. You know, saying thanks for joining us. Like, review, subscribe. I am 25. That is Mr. Logical. We are Sports Reports Disorder. Like, review, subscribe, share, rate, do all the free things, do all the good things. See you on Friday. Love you. Peace.